This, this is the Tom Bigby Tales. I'm Shannon Evans, your host. I write about a small town in northeast Mississippi on the Tombigbee River, and sometimes, like today, I write about the rest of the state. Today I have with me Professor Ralph Vituccio from, you want to take it from there?
From Carnegie Mellon University. I'm a professor in the Entertainment Technology Center, where I'm a filmmaker, and I do mostly documentary work, educational work as well, interactive storytelling, and I work with students in producing new emerging media pieces like virtual reality, augmented reality, video games, and interactive installations.
Fabulous. Um, you and I met on the Mississippi John Hurt project, which we both were incredibly excited about, still are. The actual end product is absolutely wonderful. I saw it a couple of weeks ago when I was down there for the unfortunate burning of the museum.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, your installation is in the church, which is right
thank
next
goodness.
door. Thank goodness. Yeah, absolutely. Because I know we talked about putting it on the outside of the building. We made had a couple of different ideas, and we ended up going. You guys decided it was best to have it at the church, which I think is a fabulous place. Um, I talked to your student Cy about the march that y'all went on after the installation at the October festival. And I wanted
Right.
to talk to you more about your experiences because we spent a long weekend together before that, and then you came back in October for that event. And
Right.
I just kind of want to hear, what are your thoughts on what's transpired with with the fire at the Hurt Museum, what your experience was in Carroll County, and kind of what's your global feeling on this um, entire summer of events that we've experienced together.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, we went down there with my students. Well, we were down there first. Charles Johnson and I came down first, and my son Matthew Vituccio came down. He was helping us as well to just explore the landscape and understand what was going on before our students started actually on a project. So we were there in the summer, and we met with you. We met with Mary Frances. We took a tour of the Blues Trail. We, visited the places and we really, the research I did on the web was very different from what you showed me and where things had happened. So it wasn't good information of where the locations were for some of the buildings. That I thought, well, this store was where Mississippi John Hurt played, but no, wasn't even allowed in on the porch of that store. So little things like that was really interesting and fascinating. And then we visited Emmett Till's, the site of it where Emmett Till was abducted, Robert Johnson's grave, and went into the courthouse in Greenwood, and saw the courthouse and the rope hanging down from the ceiling, which was in kind of
Well, that was
a
in Carroll
motif.
County. That was
That
in
was in Carroll
County.
County. Yeah, was in Greenwood, right? In
No, that
Greenwood,
was in
yeah.
Carrollton in Carrollton,
Oh,
Mississippi,
Carrollton.
which
I'm
is
sorry. I
yeah.
You're right.
Greenwood was where you stayed in the hotel at the Alluvion.
Right. I get it. All right. And so overall, my impression was I felt when I came back to Pittsburgh, I I was telling everybody I felt like I was going back in time 100 years. It just felt like 100 years. I just went back in time, and why I felt that I'm not quite sure. Just the sense of it, just the sense of the history of it, particularly the African American history of all the tragedy and horrible things that happened there. Seeing the Ku Klux Klan painting big things on the walls of buildings and motif slogans, it was like, wow, you don't see that up here in the north so much, or at least in Pittsburgh. I imagine it exists. Don't get me wrong. It's not that it doesn't exist, but it's pretty obvious down there and outward. It's people wear it on their shirt sleeves. They don't hide it.
No, they don't.
Um,
Not in that side of
yeah,
the state. The whole state's not
yeah.
like that, fortunately.
I don't think so. I wouldn't think so. But at that area we were at in Carleton County, in fact, when I did read a little bit more about Carleton County, or maybe Shannon, you told me this, the Carrollton County in the neighboring county, up until the early 1950s, up to mid 1950s, had the most lynchings of African Americans in the whole United States.
Correct. They also hold one of the highest incarceration percentages of African Americans.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah. And
So,
yeah, Carroll County is, I mean, there's no real town. There's only Carrollton, which is just a square and a courthouse.
yeah,
The
yeah,
I don't know of any real industry other than farming, and most of that farming, of course, is cattle because it's up in the hills. It's not cotton farming. There is some, but not like down the hill down in LaFleur County where Greenwood is. And then there's a lot of logging. So it's not a very wealthy county to start
right,
with, and it's not a very diverse county. For
yeah,
instance, the
right,
section of the county where Mary Frances and the Hurt Foundation Museum and her family reside is there are no other African American families in that part of the county. They're pushed over to the other side of the county, or they live right behind the courthouse in Carrollton in a very, very small concentrated community. The rest of the African American population is mostly focused over in Blackhawk, in
uh-huh,
that area,
yeah,
Quila, Blackhawk, and going that way.
yeah,
And so, it's still I think the county school there is no city school, it's a county school. I think there's a Carrollton Elementary School, but the high school, it's still 99% African American. It's still white flight, and most of the whites send their children to old segregationist academies that are still they might have a handful of students of different races, but it's still pretty much a segregationist academy.
yeah, yeah. So that was the first time we went, and then the second time we went is like you mentioned, in October. We came down with the student team that was going to build this um, interactive sort of programming to honor the legacy of Mississippi John Hurt,
Uh-huh.
Mary Frances Hurt's granddaddy. And so we came down with the whole team, the whole student team. It was really pretty amazing. And a cameraman, we shot a bunch of video, we had a drone, we were shooting drone images of everything. And
Oh,
in
wow.
the museum, outside of the museum, during the festival, there were some performers playing and, playing music. I forget her name. The songbird of Mississippi was there. Wonderful African American woman who sang in the church and did some things.
Oh, that's
It was
my
really,
friend. That's
yeah,
my
yeah. I forget.
yeah.
I loved her. I want to
She
use her I want to use her in a film or video
oh,
or something.
I can get you in contact with her. She's a friend of
She
mine.
was great, man.
Yeah.
She was great.
She lives
So
very close to me.
yeah. So we were there for that, and one of the events was the unveiling of the cemetery stone going into the cemetery, the new stone. And we were all coming down to the cemetery. We all started off at the Mary Frances Hertz property at the museum, John Hertz Museum,
So
and
let
we
me
all went up.
clarify the stone. So the stone is to commemorate the St. James Missionary Baptist Church, which used to reside across the dirt road from where the current cemetery is, but there was more cemetery across the road.
Right.
But because of encroachment and the board of supervisors just giving land away, the families that are buried on the other side of the road, the Mount Zion Memorial Fund, along with the Hurt Foundation, we put together a commemorative stone, which is about, I don't know, it's a little over 4 feet tall, and
That's pretty big.
it lists the names of the families and the importance of that church and the fact that its erasure has been going on. So
Yeah.
that kind of sets the scene, and that's where John Hurt's buried, is in that cemetery, in the back of that
Yeah.
cemetery.
Yeah. So that church, it was over there where that has been already desecrated, encroached. That's not the same church that Mary has in her property, is it?
Yes, that's the church that's been rebuilt. So
That's
that
what I
church
thought.
was hit
That's
by
what
a
I,
tornado, was hit by a tornado
yeah.
in like 1920 maybe. And so the community gathered all the timber that they could, and they carried it down the hill to where we went to that second site
Uh-huh.
between Teoc up on the hill and Avalon. When we stopped, they rebuilt it there using those timbers.
I see.
So when the church was picked up and moved, it was moved as you see it now.
Mhm. Yeah. So we all drove from the museum site. It was a group of us. It was probably, I don't know, anywhere from 30 to 45 people.
Uh-huh.
And we all parked up the road, further up the road from the cemetery site, the graveyard of Mr. where we were commemorating the cemetery. And we all walked out together with someone leading us with a guitar singing "We Shall Overcome." So, and I had my little cell phone and I was recording it as we were going down the hill, walking, had it up high, recording people. And so I could see off to the right where you talked about where on the other side of the street, or what you call it, the dirt road, um, there were a couple there. There was an older couple there. They had their truck up there and they had the little sort of driveway going up, roped off. It wasn't a driveway, just a little, little area you could drive your car up in on grass or dirt.
Uh-huh.
And so we're walking down and I can see those people in my camera in the distance. And I'm thinking, well, that's funny. There's no one ever down there, right? There's no one's ever there. But these people were there that day. They knew an event was happening. They knew something was going to go on. That's what it looked like to me anyway. So
Mhm.
we're walking down and the guy, I figured who it was singing, leading the group playing "We Shall Overcome" on his guitar, and everyone was singing. And then as we got closer to the desecrated that had been given away to this white couple, I guess this area that was once a cemetery, the white woman said to us, the woman yelled out, "There's no bones over here. Nobody needs to come over here. This is private property. There's no bones over here." So, and Mary Frances reacted to it and saying, "You have a lot of nerve, being here and saying that to us at this time." And then the other woman said, "You all should just go back where you came from. We don't want you here." And that was sort of it at all. And we all went down to the cemetery and the people stayed on their side and they were like looking, watching us, making sure no one stepped on whatever they considered their property that was given to them, at
Yeah.
some point somehow, probably for free. And and apparently all the tombstones that were over there at one point have been taken and thrown off into the woods. So it was completely desecrated, right? And I would imagine, was that cemetery older than the one
Yes, it
than
was
the
the
one?
original, and there were graves all the way up to the church, so it was pretty full.
Yeah. So all those graves over there were those people who are buried or under the ground. They're
Yep.
they
That's
have
why
it
you
all
can, when you
manicured.
stand up there, you can see the rows of graves. You can see, and in the trees, you can see the impressions that are clearly, and they're linear. There's like, there's one here and then another and then another. They're very consecutive. It's
Yeah.
that's like, how can they deny that there's something up there?
Yeah, yeah. So then the ceremony continued after that. It was a little stressful there. I know Mary Frances really felt it, and and my students who were like, I think all but one are from China, so they're like foreign students, and they were like, their eyes were like this and like, whoa, what's going on? They were really scared. They actually were that when I talked to them later, they were kind of frightened about it all. They were really afraid. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't understand what,
Uh-huh.
the anger of that couple that was on the other side of saying, "There's no bones over here. I don't want
And
any. There's private property.
what's
Nobody come
interesting
over here."
is what's interesting is how I mean, those couples are that couple is in their late 70s, I would guess.
Yeah, they're older couple.
But the anger was palpable.
Yeah. No, it was, and they were there. They knew this was happening. They weren't there on by accident. They
Uh,
knew this was going on. They were there to protect their little piece of ground that are that they've taken over this African American cemetery they call their own, and they knew we were coming down that road. They were expecting us,
Uh-huh.
and I don't know whether, I mean, the story is, and who knows whether they were the husband was a KKK guy. I'm not sure. Chances, you heard that. Oh yes, he probably was, but who knows? I don't know. So I'm just, kind of, my opinion was, from what I heard, is that maybe he is a KKK guy, because apparently he didn't do the talking. He wasn't the guy. He wasn't yelling at us. It was the woman who was like the aggressive one, the aggressor
Uh-huh.
here. And so then the ceremony took place, and we went down to the grave, and a lot of people played guitars and sang some songs of Mississippi John's. And it was a really, at the graves, at the cemetery marker, I people talked and gave some speeches. I gave a little bit of a speech. I introduced my students. I talked about what we were doing there and what our intention was and what we were building and creating for the museum. And then we went back to the museum at that time, and Mary Francis's property, and more music was played. More people got up and played music and played Mississippi John's songs. There was some food there, so it was like that event. We had people. There was actually two families from Italy there, and I heard people speaking Italian, and I'm not a great. I don't speak Italian very well, even though I'm Italian American, and I have family still live in Italy. But there were two they drove down in these two big SUVs, and they were like, I hear Italian being spoken in the middle of the Mississippi Delta, and I'm like, what am I hearing here? So
Yeah.
I went over and I introduced myself and talked to a couple of them. They were really into the blues. They were really into Mississippi John Hurt. They had started at Clarksdale and made their way down to this event. They knew about the event. They
Oh,
they knew what
wow.
was they knew what was going on, and they were there specifically because they were real blues freaks, and they really love it. They love that music. So it was really interesting, and yeah, and so people were from all over, Boston, New York, I don't know, all over the place. It was really a pretty amazing situation. Um, and then after that, we all left, and we started building what we were going to build. And then in December again, the first week in December, I believe it was, my colleague, Charles Johnson, and three of the team members drove down and installed the interactive installation piece, which
Oh,
which
wow.
consisted of a large 45-inch, I think even bigger, 57-inch flat screen television.
Uh-huh.
And then what was connected to it was an old 1940s radio. It looked like an old
Uh-huh.
radio. And then on the dial, instead of like channels, 98.5 or 106.7,
Uh-huh.
whatever, there were decades of Mississippi John's life.
Oh,
So
wow.
you started with the 30s, you go into the 40s, 50s, 60s, and as you move the dial, the images and the video on the television screen would depict what was happening during that time period, whether it was the civil rights movement, whether it was Mississippi John Hurt playing at the Newport Folk Festival, or whatever. And then it was really cool. It was really, really innovative, really
Uh-huh.
fantastic piece of art and creativity that these students put together. So yeah, so that was sort of, they installed it, and it's still there and it's working.
Yeah, it's working great.
And
It was working 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when
yeah.
I was there. It was
Oh, well, that's
fantastic.
good to hear, because you never know with technology.
Yeah, yeah.
It's always a, you just keep your fingers crossed
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
What was interesting though is that a week after that event, that's when Mary Frances started telling me she was getting phone calls, threatening phone calls, and actually people telling her they're going to burn the museum down.
Yeah.
And that's when the markers start disappearing too. That's when all the markers start disappearing from, the road you turn off to go to
Yeah.
Avalon, where the old store where he actually Mississippi did play. When we were there, when you and I were there, the marker was down into the weeds. It had been
Yep.
knocked
It was
over into the
there.
weeds.
It's gone
Yeah, it was
now.
there, but it wasn't there anymore. After we went back, it didn't exist anymore. It didn't exist. And then there was another marker by the old store that disappeared too. Uh-huh.
Well, the Blues Trail marker didn't disappear. It was picked up by it because the Hurt Foundation has permission to move it, and they had worked to have it removed and delivered to Hammond and Associates. Hammond and Associates is the company that does all the foundry work and renovates them and then installs them. So
Uh-huh.
after the building burned, in concern that it too might be destroyed, and with the Blues Trail marker, the letter that they had from the Blues Trail Commission to have it moved because Josh Hurst, who is a board of supervisors for that district and who worked for the county roads, kept refusing to move the sign. And then he had excuse like, I'm too busy, I'm this, that, and the other. And then I was notified that the reason why he hadn't moved it was because this was when I went down for the after the place had burned. I was told by the circuit clerk that the reason why it wasn't moved was because Hearst felt that it was on private property and he couldn't move it. Now he didn't bother to tell any of us that, and we've called multiple times, but the last call I made to him and Mary Frances made a call to him on behalf of the foundation was, let's see, the Friday before the place burned.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then I called that Friday. Mary Frances had called on Thursday. He hadn't returned either of our calls. And then the building burned the day after it was put on the National Registry. So
Wow, that's
out of concern for further possibility of sabotage or, just souvenir seekers, the foundation had the sign pulled up and delivered to Mr. Hammond. And Alan Hammond and company is who does the Blues Trail markers. And so, I mean, it's been sitting there for 20 years. It's time for it has to be cleaned. And I mean, it's covered in pecan sap. And remember when we were there, it had poison ivy growing on it. So whoever
yes.
went to go get it for the foundation, God, I hope they didn't get a big case of poison ivy. But anyways,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it's with uh the governing organization that deals with the signs, and
Yeah.
it will
Yeah.
go to either the site of the church, um, or it will go to the cemetery. And that'll be a
Yeah.
discussion between Mary Frances, the foundation, and Mr. Hammond.
Yeah. So the incidents, the series of incidents that was given to me was like, I'll read them fast here. 2010, the Avalon, a mercantile store where Mississippi John was known to perform in Avalon, was burned down. 2010.
Mhm.
2019, St. James Calvary, where Mississippi John is buried, was given to a resident who renamed it and desecrated it. 2023, Mary Frances starts receiving death threats
Mhm.
because she went to the courthouse complaining about this. And also I think also in addition to that, I think if I recall, her saying that her granddaddy, I think her great grandfathers owned a lot more land in that area, and he was going into the courthouse under what
It
why
was
did these
her
other
great grandmother. It was Mississippi John Hurt's mother.
and that start disappearing. And they would tell her, well, we can't find the paperwork or whatever, it's burned down or whatever they burned. Maybe it's a long
Yeah.
time ago. 2023, the people who attended the memorial walk, which I was on, to unveil a new marker for the St. James Cemetery, were heckled and insulted. I was there, I heard it, I saw it, I have it on tape. 2023, the Blues Trail marker erected to identify where the Avalon stood was knocked down and disappeared, which we saw.
Correct.
2024, the museum burns down.
Yeah.
2024, the Valley store, which aided Tom Hoskins in Hurt's discovery, was burglarized, and the Blues Trail marker outside honoring John Hurt has gone missing.
And it's not missing. And I would doubt that that building has been broken into. Here are two reasons why. One, there's no porch on the front of that building. It's collapsed. I think
Yeah,
the
I saw
floor
it.
has the floor inside, based on the condition of the outside, I would suspect the inside has collapsed as well.
I'll bet. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all those windows, I mean, we've got photos going back through the summer, and all those windows that they're talking about being broken are were already broken. I don't know that any of them are newly broken. Um,
Yeah.
I kind of doubt it. I think that was a case of trying to distract from the burning of the John Hurt Museum. The other thing that's
Yeah.
missing on that timeline is all the work we've been doing down in the myself and Mary Frances, that we've been doing down in the courthouse with the maps and stuff. And we were actually run out of a guy named Wilton Neal. I don't think he's in office anymore, but he was the tax assessor and he was in charge of the maps. And I asked to see the maps that predated the one he handed us, that had, it's got the St. James Cemetery, but only on the left side of the road. On the other side of the road, and it's outlined and it's in black marker. And on the other side, he's marked it out, and then he writes Spain Cemetery to the right of it. So
Yeah,
clearly it said something under that. So I asked to
yeah.
see the original map, and he said there's no such thing. And I said there is such a thing. And he got really angry with me, and I said, "Look, you have to reassess your land either every 4 years or every 6 years in the state of Mississippi." And I said, "And they've been doing this since 1976 or 1980, depending on when you were brought into the system. I'm guessing since you're a smaller community, a smaller county with fewer ownership, um, that yours is probably every 6 years. So where's the one 6 years before this map?" And he refused to show it to me, and he called the sheriff on me.
Well, I remember you telling me that story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And that was back in
I remember you telling me that story.
June. It was, so you came down, when did you come down? When did y'all come down?
First time was in the summer. I can't remember which month it
June or
was. It was,
July? I
it was
think it was
before,
like,
it was right before September.
I think it was like March or April when I had
No, it
this.
wasn't. No, I don't, it was before, it was after that.
No,
We were
me,
down
I
there.
said my experience was about March or April.
Oh, yeah.
Because
So,
Mary Frances and I were working. The other thing I found was there's a deed that says, with except that Charles Spain has purchased the land around there, with the exception of the cemetery.
that's wow.
And
Right. And
that predates the map that got colored in on. So there's
yeah. And
it's,
then,
the lack of transparency makes me question things more.
oh,
It
yeah.
maybe there's an explanation, but when you
Yeah.
aren't transparent, I have lots, it just makes me ask more questions, which apparently
Oh,
made people
absolutely.
very uncomfortable there.
Oh,
Very
yeah. Well,
uncomfortable.
that's why, probably a good reason why they made them uncomfortable, was they realized they were doing what old boys do. Just
Yeah,
kind of
and this old
greasing,
girl wasn't gonna tolerate the old boys system.
yeah, just greasing palms, greasing each other's palms.
Yeah,
And I think,
all I asked for was just show me the documents. If this is
well,
true,
because
show
if
me
he
the
showed you
document.
the document, it would have been proof that he just did it, you know, on his own.
You
He
think?
wasn't,
You
yeah,
think?
yeah, you think.
But
Well,
there's no transparency.
and the other thing that I mentioned a little earlier is when I talked to Mary Frances, and after that cemetery memorial walk where we were heckled and insulted, Mary Frances told me the last time I talked to her was that it was a we had a week, it was within a week after that happened, she started getting more death threats.
Mhm.
And she told me
They were
that
pretty
they
ugly.
actually, one of the messages was actually, we're going to burn your museum down. She actually was, she was told that.
Yep, and they were ugly, ugly words.
Yeah, yeah. So she was getting a lot of this stuff, and Mary Frances is no pushover. So I could see why, she's going to go after this and argue her case, and I can see people saying, who you think you are, you better be quiet and mind your business and that kind of stuff.
Well, the day I went down there the day after the fire to take pictures and to check on things and to talk to the sheriff and see if I could meet up with the fire inspector if they were still there. But mostly I went down there to take pictures for Mary Frances and to check on the church and to check on your project. And I went back to town, and out of courtesy, I went to the sheriff and, introduced myself again and said, "Hey, you know, I'm here in town." Um, and he says to me, not knowing how close I am with Mary Frances, goes, "Is Miss Hurt got dementia?" And I went, "Excuse me?" He says, "Well, she got pretty upset with me. I think she's got some dementia going on." And I looked at him and I said, "She just lost 40 years of her blood, sweat, and tears." I said, "I've only lost 3 years of my work at that museum." She's lost 40 years of her money, her blood, her interest, everything that she's ever done. And this is her family's legacy. And I said, and she's really upset. And he says, honey, that ain't upset. That's dementia. And I just said,
Oh my
okay.
God.
I said, well, I'll be sure and share that with her. And
Oh, Jesus.
so I don't know what to say. But this is also the same sheriff that within 3 hours of the fire was announcing that it was an electrical fire. And you know, he's putting out press releases right and left, and he's putting out false press releases. His
Yeah,
most
yeah.
So he put out the one saying that the sign was stolen and that Crime Stoppers should be involved. So Mary Frances and I immediately we couldn't get the sheriff on the phone, so we went to the Greenwood Commonwealth to the newspaper and said she wanted the Commonwealth to know that the sign was on its way to Hammond and Associates. So she puts out a press she goes and talks to Jeff Bird and Susan Montgomery at the Greenwood Commonwealth Press, which is the local paper, and says the sign's not missing. I'm sorry, my dogs are gonna bark. Yes, we're live and on T and on
Zoom.
anyways, um Mary Frances went on board, excuse me a second, and
Sure.
hang on. Ow. Talk to him. Sorry, Ralph. No.
No worries.
Okay. Anyways, um, she told him that um anyways, we talked to him and we told him what had happened and that the sign was being tended to and was with Ralph with Alan Hammond and Associates. And
Yeah.
and then he comes out and she says the foundation. I mean, she's very clear in what she said. The foundation has it. The foundation had everything to do with it. She's very clear on who had it. And then that afternoon or the next day, I think it was the next day. Yeah, it was it was after it had gone to press, what had happened with the sign. Then the sheriff sends out another press release that says, "Oh, the sign is with the Hurt family," which leads to a lot of animosity and a lot of misinformation, which puts the Hurt family as individuals in danger.
Yeah.
And so I called the I called both the Commonwealth and I called the sheriff's office. Didn't get an answer from the sheriff's office, but I called the Commonwealth and I was like, "Hey, and then I called Hammond and Associates and I said, "Hey, is it okay if I put out a press release that says exactly what's going on?" And he
Yeah.
was like, "Absolutely, because this is silly misinformation being fired off, fired off, fired off." So
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
hopes is that the sheriff cools his jets. I don't know if he's just eager to be the first on the press. I don't know what I don't know. It's
Well,
not
it's
a good
also like
look.
it's also like setting. I mean, it's also setting up the smoke screen too. The first you get out there and set up that smoke screen, everything else after that is like, well, that's not right. That's secondary information. I came
Correct.
out with the story, the real story, and it's like it was nothing.
Yeah, correct.
It's like a
So he
smoke screen. It's like a good PR move. You get out there first with the story, and that's what sticks. That's what's stickier than anything else that
yeah.
comes down the pipe.
So there's apparently so Susan Montgomery wrote a more extensive article that I haven't had a chance to download it yet. It's on the Greenwood Commonwealth's website, so I'm gonna go download that. And apparently, she tried to set the both sides of the story. I don't know. I'm presuming she did. Um, because I think she tries to be fair, but I mean, but I've got
There's
to
a
go
lot of
read the
emotion.
article.
There's a lot of emotion. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and And this is no comment on Susan herself, so please don't take it that way. Um, there is there is a segment of white society in the South that always thinks everybody's doing the best they can in the moment they're in. They believe in this. Well, they're just doing the best they can. Well, sometimes the best they can is meant to do what you said, create a smoke screen to cause problems.
Mhm.
Um and so there's this other group that then accepts that and says, "Well, I know so and so, and he seems like the nicest guy when he's around me, or he's so good to his mama, or
Yes,
whatever."
I saw
You
that.
know, a lot of people are great to their parents or great to the people around them, but in reality, they're really horrible human beings, and they do
I
some really
saw
nasty
that.
things.
When you took us to the courthouse that time and we met some of the people, there was, and I come in with a little prejudice, maybe a little bit of more stereotyping,
Uh-huh,
but they're really sugar sweet and sugar nice
uh-huh.
and I kind of and I my first reaction, because I don't know, maybe the way I was brought up in the area, world I live in, is like, yeah, how
So
real is
how
this? Is
so
this real? Or
what
is this a
was
smoke screen?
so how many African Americans did you see working in that building?
Oh, no, not at all.
No, not except for the trustees who cleaned the bathroom.
Yeah, no, I didn't see them. I didn't see anybody cleaning the bathrooms either. So no, I didn't see any.
There are none that I know of. I've not seen a
No.
single person of color. They have one person on the board of supervisors who's a person of color. Um,
I I saw Shannon, if I recall, I saw a lot of signs up with advertising a black sheriff.
yeah, he was the guy running for sheriff.
Yeah, he didn't get it though.
No, he did not.
Yeah.
Because they still gerrymander, but
But yes, yeah, for sure.
gerrymandering's alive and well in Mississippi and other places.
Yeah.
Well, we're
So,
kind of we kind of wrote the playbook on it.
yeah. So, I had been thinking, and I don't know how possible this could be, but my thinking was, would be a really interesting, being a documentarian that I am. I think the interesting story is the work, like Mary Frances, over 40 years of her life trying to establish this and spending her life in this, and just preserving the legacy of her family and of her famous granddad. And then that those challenges and obstacles she's faced, from going into the county building trying to reclaim the land that was taken from her, the cemetery that was desecrated and given away, her the signs disappearing, the museum burning down.
Yeah.
And then where do you go from there? The foundation, the forming of the foundation. you're
Well, I
you're
mean,
involved.
I mean, let's go back. How did she go to school? She had to ride a bus 45 minutes away plus. She had to go all the way to Money, Mississippi to go to school. And and her parents were sharecroppers. Now, the mythology is that her grandfather was a sharecropper. He never was. He worked for the railroad. He took care of cattle for a couple of people, but he was never a sharecropper. I mean, their family jokes that he couldn't even grow a garden for the family. But I mean, he was a musician his whole life. That was what he did.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, she grew up in a house with 13 children, and her father died when she was just a little girl. I don't even think she was a teenager yet.
Yeah.
And so her grandfather came home from finally getting recognition in after the Newport Festival. He'd gone to Washington D.C. and was finally recording songs and working with Hoskins, and he gave it all up and came home to take care of Mary Francis's siblings with her
Mhm.
mother because there was no way she could do it on her own.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the story is just it's the story of Mississippi. And now for it to burn, I'm like, gosh darn it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is. Excuse me. But well, I would really love to see you do something more with that.
Yeah, I've been talking around about raising some money, and I got a couple people that are be interested in it, and putting money up to at least get it started, to get it rolling and getting off the ground. I know someone else told me, they said, well, if you're going to do this and you're going to go down there, you better be careful because you may not come back. And I'm like, nah, this ain't going to happen. Because
Well,
yeah, that's what somebody said. Someone said, yeah, you better be careful. This could be, but that's not my concern. My concern isn't that so much, is that it's a really interesting story. It's a fantastic, it's not even interesting. It's a story that needs to be told.
it has to be told. I mean, this
Yeah.
is where I am. I'm trying to figure out this to storyboard all this.
Yeah.
Where do we go with this?
I think
The world needs
well,
to know.
I think that, I first of all, interviews, starting with interviews, they don't have to be down there. They could be anywhere. With me, you, Mary Frances, any other sort of players you may think could be involved, maybe Mary Frances' sister, I'm not sure. Um, and then from there, we can collect some of the images that we've gathered over the years and what we've shot already. We've got a lot of great film footage, and then also go down there and start documenting the place, the area, going, just doing some of that stuff and telling that story that way, showing the burnout building. I mean, that's sort of a start of it. Where it goes from there is, it's like a big puzzle. You don't,
Well,
trying to
I'd love
storyboard
to
something.
I'd love to interview that sheriff.
Well, yeah, if he would do it, yeah,
I don't know that
he'd
he
be
would,
like,
but
I don't know if he would either, especially if if he thinks there's something, going on with it, he'll say, nah, it's all right. Because, that's happened to me before. If someone thinks you're doing some expose, they
uh-huh.
will talk. Yeah. Anyway, that's the idea. But I can't just go off and do that on my own. I need to get some support for it.
Yeah, I understand. Matter of fact, this has motivated me to start with a real good friend of mine to create something called the Southern Film Society.
Ah, nice.
So, Mississippi wants to give people money to make movies here. They will, I can't remember how much is 20 or 30% that they'll kick in.
Ooh,
You have to have a budget of $50,000 or more, but
yeah,
they're
yeah,
trying to get films made here. And it doesn't appear to have to be full length. It can be documentaries, it can be, of various things.
And
But
is it like films that make Mississippi look great, or films that make Mississippi maybe not look so good sometimes?
no, there doesn't appear. They're just trying to give filmmakers incentives to come to Mississippi and make films.
Yeah,
So what we have been talking about is creating something so that one, we make people aware of that, and two, get out the story. I'm always about telling the actual history of the South, not the
yeah,
made up stuff and not the comfortable stuff. Some of it's very uncomfortable, but it needs to be told.
yeah, yeah,
And how would you do that? And how do you support other creative people who come to do that? And I
yeah,
think that's, I'm not, like I said, I'm not even sure exactly what it looks like yet. We just hit on it a couple of days ago because of all of this and just going,
yeah, yeah. No,
something
really.
there's something
And,
needs to be done.
and with so much of the footage we have already in the can, it's not like we have to shoot it. So much of the footage has already been taken of the museum as it stands
Uh-huh.
now, that one could even start using that in telling their own story about it. And like, just like you and I were talking about the chronology of events, how, when I first came, when came
Uh-huh.
down for the incident with the couple, the Spangs, was that their name?
Spain.
Spangs.
Spain, Spain. I
Yeah,
think they put an extra N in,
that's
but it's
Spang,
still
yes.
Spain.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, in a script that, that's written, that sets up the story,
Uh-huh.
and leads it into this, area where there's like some nefarious deeds are being done here.
Uh-huh.
But it can't be proven. They can't be absolutely proven. That's the
Yeah.
thing about it. You can't absolutely prove this is happening, other than the only proof you have, and it's not even like a direct, is the threats Mary Frances was given. have been experiencing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
and,
anyway,
and I think there's more to this. I really do. And I think, you
what do
know,
you think is more?
out of
What do you think?
the ashes, pardon?
What do you think is more to it? What do you mean?
There has to be there has to be a win. Otherwise, these jerks lose. These jerks win and we get nothing, right? The losers
Yeah, yeah,
continue to win. And so for me, if it starts a movement, if it starts a, an innovation, or it starts getting people to talk again and
yeah,
recognize that we're not done with this stupid battle. It's still going
yeah,
on. So a lot of people want to
yeah,
go, oh, well, Mississippi's not, there's no problem in Mississippi anymore. You wouldn't believe the number of people. I'm like going, are you kidding? Ku Klux Klan meets right here in Lowndes County, and I can tell you where. And
yeah,
they
yeah.
name their companies like Dixie and stuff like that. Now, that doesn't mean anybody who names their company Dixie is, but I know
Yeah,
some that are. And I get inboxes when I post videos about we have a monument that was a sizable monument put up by the Daughters of the Confederacy, and it was moved from in front of the courthouse to the Friendship Cemetery, which is a large cemetery in this town. It's a white
yeah,
predominant cemetery, and they put it next to where the soldiers who were treated here in our hospitals from Shiloh. And so they went, we'll put it by the vault where they're all buried. It's a peaceful, respectful place. We're not getting rid of the monument, but we're putting it in a place where it commemorates what it's supposed to commemorate, and it doesn't cause undue um uh discomfort to those who, especially African Americans, who are going to the courthouse to, you know, to deal with a loved one who's incarcerated, or preventing someone from being incarcerated, or whatever reason they're there. They're in court. And so they have to always walk by this large, I mean, we're talking, it's like 3 or 4 soldiers on the bottom and then 2 on top. And so, and then 2 on the outside of it. So it's a lot of Confederacy stuck in your face. It's a sizable
yeah,
piece. It
yeah,
wa-
yeah,
it was taken apart, it was cleaned, it was restored, it was repaired, and it was taken out to the cemetery. I go out there and walk past it every day. It's absolutely beautiful where it is, and it commemorates the Confederate dead. It's what it was designed to do. That's where it is. It's right by where they're all buried.
yeah.
And if I make any videos about it, I can guarantee you before I go to bed that night, I'll have people from the Klan uh, inboxing me and making threats. So I just laugh and go, okay. I mean, like whatever. I'm
And that's the other thing too. How how much is the KKK hidden? Are they really hidden that much, or is it
Oh
just
yeah,
out in
they're
the open?
they're hidden. There was it hidden in plain sight. There's a place close to me. Now I'm on the other side of the state, okay, from where Mary Francis's home is. I'm 2 hours,
Sure.
2 hours east. I'm on the Alabama line. And everybody says, "Oh no, the Klan's not here. They're over in Alabama." Well, no. I mean, I could send you pictures of a recent wedding at the Double D burger joint up there in Steens, Mississippi, and the Grand Poobah is marrying a member of the Ku Klux Klan to his new wife, and both of them are wearing Klan apparel. We all know
Mm,
what that looks like, and they're not even trying to hide their faces.
yeah,
And then, on the podium where the preacher person or whatever he is, the officiant, there's a thing that's the Rosetta that they use, and then the two crossed Confederate flags, and then you know whatever the
yeah,
whatever the seal is of the Grand Poobah of the Ku Klux Klan is for that community. They don't
yeah,
hide. They're on Facebook. You can find them. They're not hard to find.
yeah, yeah.
It's just like a
Mm,
Facebook battle. I'm not going to change anybody's mind on Facebook, right? People are going to
absolutely.
think what they think, and so I'm not going to be able to change their opinion. But what I can do is I can stick to the facts. And the facts are that there's still a lot of hatred in our country. There's still a lot of
Yep.
inequality. And
Yeah.
yes, life is what you make of it, but some of us are dealt a more fair hand to start with. Some of us
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
with a couple of aces in our hand and the others don't. And so I believe that we all have to we have to be willing to fight for those who still need the aces in their hands and not be so cutthroat. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm a Pollyanna. I don't know. I think I'm a fair human being. And the it goes back to what I'm watching with Mary Frances. Um she just wants a fair investigation. She just wants she wants things to be done fairly and without the sheriff putting out a press release every 2 days.
Well, wasn't you had gotten the FBI involved or
The FBI was out there. I have photographs. It was the FBI, the ATF, the MBI, the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, and the
yeah,
fire.
yeah. What happened there? What anything
Well, we
happened there?
won't know for 45 days. And most of
Oh,
that's
okay.
because my understanding, and I talked to a couple of my friends who work in some of these investigative agencies, and they're like, "Man, we are so backed up, and it's we don't have enough. There's so many crimes. There's not enough people doing the investigation. So
Yeah,
I think we're 45 to 60 days out from knowing
yeah, yeah.
anything.
Right.
And I
Wow.
think the best thing to do is just watch what things the sheriff and his friends put out. And the other thing is I'm watching online to see if anything gets sold.
Like what? What do you mean?
Uh,
Oh,
the mem-
objects from the museum. Never thought of that. Wow.
so if I start
Interesting.
seeing stuff memorabilia coming out, then that gives me an answer right there. I don't even have
Yeah.
I don't even have to wait for I don't even have to wait for the reports. If
Right.
memorabilia starts showing up in Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or whatever.
Yeah. Wow. Never thought of that. All right, listen, I have to wrap.
I do too. I want to thank you so much for your time and let's not let so much time go before we talk again.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for inviting me. This was really interesting. It's really, I enjoyed this quite a bit. And I'll keep you up to date on whether what's happening on my end with doing something else with Mary
Okay.
Frances.
If
I
you can, if
want
I
to,
can help you with storyboarding or script
yeah,
or anything, all you got to do is ask. I'm here.
okay. Sounds great. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Ralph.
All right, Shannon. Thank you. Take care of yourself.
Okay. Until next time.
Until next time. Bye bye.